Again, I'm Bruce Lasky. I apologize. I have a slight head cold, so I'm a little bit. It's actually the first time. It's the first time I've had a cold since COVID kicked in 2.5 years ago. Which is so. I think for people washing their hands and wearing masks all the time, I've been able to avoid a cold, but this time I actually have one. So if I sound a little bit hoarse, I apologize in advance. So with that. I'm briefly going to, I'm going to ask our presenters to briefly introduce themselves. Rob Whitworth, Rob, we'll start with you. Just give a 30-second who you are, and then maybe you can pick one of the other presenters.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So yeah, I'm Rob Whitworth. I'm an associate at White & Case, which is an international law firm here in Singapore. And I'm also a member of our pro bono committee in Singapore as well. So I work with the team to find pro bono initiatives that we can all work on together. Aaron, maybe you want to go next.
Sure, Rob. So hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Chen from Hong Kong. I'm the Pro Bono Association of DA Piper. My main duty is to help the firm look after our pro bono practice in all our offices in Asia, and we have 7 offices in total across the region. I guess the next one I will pick Rob. How about Rob Houston?
Yes, hello. So I'm based in Singapore, and I work as the international arbitration foreign lawyer here that I am, as well as being the office's coordinator of pro bono work, at least as far as the international work is concerned. So I'm happy to be here to talk today about some of the great work that's ongoing for our firm in the pro bono space. Thanks.
And maybe we'll pass it to Rachita.
Thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachita. I'm a pro bono associate at Herbert Smith Freehills, which is an international law firm with headquarters in London and Sydney and offices all around the world. I lead our pro bono practice across all the offices in Asia.
Wonderful. And Madhurima, can we get from you?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Madhurima Dhanuka. I work for an organization called the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. I'm a lawyer myself, but I've been working on the area of prison reforms for the past 14 years.
Great. So welcome everybody. And as I said before, I'm Bruce Lasky. I've been a lawyer for 31 years. I've actually never worked for a large law firm, but I've worked alongside and with large law firms. Not in, but with, and I am a partner and actually what would, get into what we're going to discuss next as to what is a large law firm, but I'm a partner in a law firm in Chiang Mai, Thailand called Lana Lawyers. And I'm also one of the co-founders of and directors of the organization Babsicle. So with that, I want to give a little bit of a background. When we're talking about institutionalizing access to justice systems, and pro bono systems, it has been agreed that large law firms play an important role. They don't play the only role, but they have an important role in many ways, and often as leaders and as models. And in the work that we've been doing, both in the access to justice and pro bono field, we've really come to appreciate so much and deeply the work that large law firms do in this area and how they work and collaborate with others really to achieve this impact, which we very much believe has led to a strong step in institutionalizing both pro bono and access to justice systems. So we felt that it was incredibly vital to have this type of session, as we said, both at the pro bono conference and at the Access to Justice Exchange. Okay. So with that said, I'd like everybody to do this. Everybody, let me see your fingers. And if people could try to turn on their cameras, if you can, that would be great. If you had, okay. So what I'm going to ask people to do now is I'm going to ask you a question because we're using the term large law firm, but that has a very different meaning depending on where you're from. It has a very, very different meaning. So what we'd ask you to do is in the chat, can you write where you're from? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean country. It can be the city you're from and what who you are, where you're from, or where you're practicing, and what would be considered a large law firm in the place. How many lawyers, how many lawyers in the firm would be considered to be a large law firm? So I'll give you an example. I'm going to put it into the chat. I'll just show everyone, I'm a lawyer, I'm a partner in a law firm in Chiang Mai. And in Chiang Mai, my law firm is Lana Lawyers, and 10 lawyers is about 10 plus lawyers is considered a large law firm in Chiang Mai, so I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, so now what I'd like everybody to do is let's put it in the chat just to get an idea from each of you where you're from. And again, the country may not work, because if I was to say Bangkok in Thailand, it would be very different than 10 lawyers. So it actually really depends on where you are, where you're practicing, or where you're living. You may not be practicing. So everybody, let's put it into the chat. Aaron's got 50 plus lawyers in Hong Kong. Great. We've got Brooke saying about 450 lawyers in Sydney. That's a large law firm. So in Sydney, Australia, 450 lawyers is considered a large law firm. So the middle range law firms are probably less than that, which is Singapore. So Rob, about 50. Yeah, or Rob Houston thinks it's about 100. Okay, so okay, and maybe it's a bit of a perspective. 50 to 100. Okay, that's good. Others? Okay, so in Melbourne, it's similar to Sydney. Yeah. Okay, so absolutely Australia. Great. Okay, and Vientiane, Lao. What about in Vientiane, in Lao, where I think many people are? What would be considered a large law firm in Vientiane, Lao? Or if you're in Thailand, other parts of Thailand or other places? I think we've got people coming in from Myanmar and other places. We'll give it a couple of more minutes. And I can tell you, living in Lao, I would tell you that 8 to 10 people in a firm in Lao or in Vientiane would be considered a large law firm. Or maybe even less. Would actually be considered a larger law firm. Okay, so it's interesting to see London. Okay, London, we've got 300 to 500. So again, there's really many different ranges of what we consider to be a large law firm. With that said, what we talked about before is, regardless of the number, it is important about how you're looked upon as a large law firm and the modeling that you do. So for instance, my law firm in Thailand, in Chiang Mai Lana Lawyers, we're considered probably the largest law firm, maybe the largest law firm in Chiang Mai. And we try to model, we do a lot of pro bono, we do a lot of community awareness raising and outreach. And in doing this, it's important because we try to get other law firms to then kind of jump on and do this. Okay, so we have in Iran, a lot of lawyers will work alone. We understand that. And in many, even I'm originally from America, they still have single practitioners that work alone. But more and more, I have found that you have lawyers, maybe 2 or 3 working together, maybe in a collective. I see less and less individual lawyers working alone, but that is definitely that still is quite common around the world. So we said that law firms and large law firms can be good models, and we're talking about collaborations. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of these examples of large law firm collaborations. But before that, we asked you all, what do we mean in your mind by a large law firm? And we clearly got some answers, which is great. So what I'd like everybody to do again here, everybody with your fingers, okay? What I want you to do is, I want you to write into the chat 1 or 2 examples of what you would think would be a pro bono type of collaboration. Doesn't have to be for large law firms. It could be any type of collaboration. Doesn't have to be connected to large law firm, but any type of collaboration. So for instance, Yesterday, we were with some law firms that work at a university legal clinic. And the lawyers work with the university legal clinic. They assist in supervising students. That's an example of a collaboration. So everybody, let's just put into the chat here, okay? And just put into the chat at least one or two examples of what a type of pro bono collaboration could be, or a collaboration, a justice collaboration. It doesn't have to be necessarily pro bono, because we haven't necessarily gotten into the definition of what is pro bono. And some of you were not at the pro bono conference. So let's put it into the chat. And let's just come up with a few ideas. I'm going to count down to 10. Everybody, we're going to count down to 10. Ready? I want to hear everybody. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Put it into the chat and let's see what just some examples of collaborations. Great. Okay, so Brooke talks about collaborating NGOs on homeless, in the homelessness sector, with legal clinics and youth at risk. That's really, really good. Community education, working with NGOs. Okay, yep. Teaching lawyering skills, absolutely training people on skills, as Tony says. Legal research, legal representation. Yep. Litigation, yeah. At the pro bono conference, we talked about the buffet of different type of foods that are pro bono foods and how they are so varied. And so these are just some. And one of the things that we got across at the pro bono conference is that when legal service providers will often say, well, I don't do pro bono because I don't know, I don't have an opportunity, or I don't have the time, or I don't know where to do it. It actually is, it's because often people are like this as opposed to like this. They don't look at the buffet of food and the various choices, because there's so many choices and varieties of ways to do this, and with it and collaborating with pro bono. And if people really understood more about these type of ways to do it, including pro bono collaborations, I'm confident more people would do it. So with that, what I want to do is I'm going to now have some of the presenters tell you a little bit about their large law firm collaborations. Of course, we also have today, we've got Rob Houston, who works with K&L Gates, and Maharima, who works with her organization, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. They're actually work together, where one's an NGO and one was the law firm. So we're gonna get the perspective for both of them of how they work together. So maybe we'll start with that. And with that, we also gonna ask each of you to talk about your justice hero, and who is your justice hero, and why your justice hero symbolizes the pro bono ethic in either your law firm or in your organization. So as an example, I don't know, do people know who my justice hero is? Can people see her? So Eleanor Roosevelt was the first lady of the President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and she was probably one of the one of the most outspoken first ladies in U.S. history, and really forwarded the idea of rights for many people, including women, but absolutely not limited to women. She's just been a model for me. She was a model for my father. The story is, one day my father was in New York City and he was driving a car, and Eleanor Roosevelt was on the side of the street standing in the rain, and he picked her up, and she needed a lift to the airport, and he drove her to the airport. And I have a letter from her thanking him for that, which is amazing, but it's true when you think about then and now. So with that, maybe we could, Maharima and Rob, maybe we'll pass it over to you. Maharima, let's start with you on the initiative, and then Rob, I think we want to then kind of get into how K&L Gates kind of led into it, okay? And you'll talk for about 5 minutes or so. Good?
Yes. Thanks, Bruce, for the introduction and the context. So I'll very briefly talk about what we wanted to do, and then I'll have Rob come in and talk about how they came into the picture and how they actually helped get things done. But I should talk about my justice hero. So my justice hero is Maya Daruwala. I'm not sure if many of you know her. She was the director for CHRI for the past 20 years. She currently works in the capacity of the senior advisor, but she is my justice hero because I joined CHRI 14 years ago, and she was the director back then. And everything that I've learned, everything that I've understood about the system in India and other Commonwealth countries comes from her, not even just the system, just about how to navigate the system, because that's in the reform sector, I feel that is the most important, is to understand how and where to push for reforms, because we can all have the knowledge of law and we can have the knowledge of what's written in the books, but how you apply it, what is the practice, all of that is really important. So that being said, of course, she inspires me on a very daily basis in what we do here in terms of prison reforms. So in that note, CHRI's prison program was working in India for the past 10 years or so. Actually, not past 10 years, but actually 20 years or so, but it was specific to India. And we decided that we wanted to look at issues related to pretrial detention in a more Commonwealth-wide setting. So what we did was, so there is a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. Now, CHRI is an organization affiliated with the Commonwealth member states, their group of organizations. And we present a report to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which happens every 2 years, on an issue of interest for the various Commonwealth countries. So this year, for the 2020 CHOGM, we decided that we wanted to do a report on pre-trial detention, looking at the journey of people from the time of their arrest to the time they reach the prison, and looking at the safeguards there. And we were looking for ways in conducting the research. Now, one of the biggest challenges of doing research, especially for 54 jurisdictions, as was then, now, of course, the Commonwealth has 56 jurisdictions, is research. So how do you get information which is valid, which is, sorry. So getting that validated information on what we wanted to do, we were looking for how to do this, and we reached out to Trust Law. 1 second, my voice has gone off. Yeah, so sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're like me. That's okay.
Yes, I know. I think it's infectious. It's come to me from you. Well, so yeah. So we're looking for how to do this, and we reached out to Trust Law, and then they reached out to some law firms on our behalf. And this is where K&L Gates came into the picture, because we were not very sure that we wanted to go the route of desk research for the 54 countries, because we were looking primarily at somebody who understood the system, who would look beyond just the paper and look at also the other policies that come into the picture, including the jurisprudence, etc. So now, on that note, I'm going to hand this over to Rob, and he can explain on how they came into the picture and all the wonderful things they did after that.
And Maureen, let me just step, because you mentioned Trust Law, which is another, I guess, long-term partner of all of us. And Trust Law is they work as a type, and they do many things, but they also work as a type of what they call a clearinghouse, where they connect people up, people that have legal needs, and then people have legal services, they connect them up. And we were just with Trust Law during the Asia Pro Bono conference. They're great in helping to build these collaborations. They're one of a number of really amazing, there's PeelNet, there's Trust Law, there's iPro Bono, there's many other ones that do great work related to, clearinghouse. Okay, so Rob, over to you, because you have the K&L Gates, perspective and components.
That's right. Okay, so let me start by talking a little bit about the black and white photo that's hovering above me here. So Jacques Maritain is a guy who probably isn't terribly well known today. I bet a lot of folks who've seen this picture in the course of the conference don't really know him. I happened to cross him before, and I admired the contribution that he made, because he wasn't one of the ones in the room actually drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He was one of the ones on the sidelines who was trying to work through the philosophical underpinnings that would make it gather the support necessary to succeed and would make it make sense and work. back when you know, there was no such thing as human rights. He was the one who was trying to build up to it. And it reminds me, and I think it should remind everybody, that the work that is done in pro bono context is not the lawyer standing in court. It's not the person who's even necessarily doing the legal research and putting together a memorandum. It's all of us. We all have some role to play, even though you might think, well, gosh, that sounds like it's you know, it belongs more in a classroom than a courtroom. That everyone has an important role to play. And coming back to the topic here, you know, Madarima's given a great overview of the work on pretrial detention that Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative has done. We are obviously, you know, privileged to have had a part to play in that. And I'd like to talk just a little bit about how that came about. But first, let me just say that, you know, this project that we did with CHRI, it's not really, I think, a story as much about a large law firm. And I mean, it's a story about CHRI, but I think it's more of a story about the potential of collaboration and the power that we have when we work together. So just to carry on from the story that Madarima started, it's a great idea, great strong focus, such important work that's necessary, looking at pretrial detention, doing it across the Commonwealth so that we can make, you know, so that CHRI can make an important, you know, contribution to the literature and understanding of the issues that arise in pretrial detention, maybe even, you know, influence some decisions that are made across the Commonwealth. So important, okay? But that great idea, that important work coming from CHRI and you know, supported by our firm, that happened because there were dozens of smaller firms in jurisdictions around the world who responded to us and said, yes, I'll stop my billable work over here and I'll have my team switch over to do something for on a pro bono basis, something where we're not being paid. They made that contribution, those dozens of small firms, which made it possible for K&O Gates as a global firm to work with CHRI as you know, the leading driving force behind that initiative to make this happen and to make it possible for Madarima to go over to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, Rwanda, and present the results to decision makers earlier this year. And so I think this is a really important example of how we can work together. It's not really a story about any one particular organization. It's a story about the power of collaboration. So how did this actually happen? Well, you know, Madarima said, well, we thought about whether we wanted to call trust law, and in the end we did. When I heard from trust law, then I was having a conversation with them about how, you know, some of the particular, you know, jurisdictions in the Commonwealth had been taken up pretty quickly by other firms saying, hey, what a great idea. We have an office here in London, perhaps. We have an office in X city, whatever city was in a financial center where we already have international law firms present. They said, sure, we'll get involved. And that's a great thing. That's really helpful, I think, to move the work forward for CHRI. But when I talked with Trust Law, then the story was not so much about the 8 jurisdictions that already had support, but the rest of the Commonwealth. And how can we do this? Because, gosh, you know, these are jurisdictions that sometimes may be more difficult to find pro bono collaborators. That was the part that I think our firm should be proud of having played, is to reach out and to bring folks together to build bridges so that we could have that broader collaboration to do this work in support of CHRI's mission. So that's I think how that came together. You know, firms like K&O Gates, firms like the other great firms that are represented here today, you know, measure pro bono commitments in tens of thousands of hours each year. We have, you know, as a firm, we have over 40 offices around the world. We can say things like that. But what we really need to remember is the strong reliance upon local engagement, the individual decision of local firms saying, I'm going to stop what I'm doing right now and I'm going to make a conscious decision that might cost me money on the bottom line of my firm to give time to support this effort. I think that's really, really the important you know, thing to remember here. And of course, I can't say enough about the work that CHRI has done and the personal cost that it is for the CHRI team, including and especially Madarima here today. Thank you.
I think I'm back. I think I'm back. You froze. Did we lose everyone? Are we still on? And Madarima and Rob, just briefly, can you just, because look, I'm a I'm a lawyer and I'm a former defense lawyer, and I understand about the horrors of pretrial detention, and Maria, you put into the chat, the guilty until proven innocent, and I don't think it could be phrased any better than that. But can you just, for about 1 minute, explain what is the problem with pretrial detention and why this focus of, and why this report is so important related to institutionalizing access to justice? What's the problem? Because I hear it all the people like, oh, what's the, people when they get arrested about. So, the elevator pitch of what's wrong with pretrial detention.
Yes, if you allow me, can I just share my screen? There is one slide I have, which
I will absolutely allow you.
which kind of, just puts into focus why pretrial detention and these issues are so important. So 1 in 3 persons in the Commonwealth is yet to be convicted. And I think that says it all on why it's important. In 15 countries, the proportion of pretrial detainees is more than 50%, with some countries at 80%, rearing between 70 to 80%, which is a huge figure. And these figures have constantly increased across the world, and they have increased all the more for the Commonwealth countries. Now,
so what you're talking about, just about, and again, I know the older I get, the less I understand. Okay, but I think the general idea is when we're talking about pretrial detention, we're talking about someone is arrested for and being charged with a crime, maybe,
yes,
and
but
they're
not
held,
yet,
maybe,
yes,
but they're not convicted, and they're
Yes.
waiting for trial. But while they're waiting, their liberty is taken away, and they're sitting in jail waiting.
Yes, and for a lot of these people, their waits are very long and they end up getting acquitted. So for that entire period of time that they spend in detention as an under trial or an unsentenced person, there is absolutely nothing that even if you spend 10 years and get acquitted, your 10 years are lost. And there is no accountability of anybody in the government or in any of the criminal justice institutions, which says, okay, you spent 10 years, we kept you there. This is what you get as compensation. There is nothing. There is this time of your life, which isn't impacting just the person who is inside. Their families, their children, everything gets impacted. Like, you've taken one person, uprooted him from everything and put him inside. And that person may not have even committed the crime. He's still innocent. But that is why, we've always read as law students that, you are innocent till you're proven guilty. But the process is now the punishment today, and guilty till proven innocent seems to be the norm.
And what you're saying is that, some people, it could be 8-10 years even. It's not, and they could be in there. And this report did a study of many countries throughout the Commonwealth to really demonstrate this problem. And this was done by you all with K&L Gates and others, right, together to really demonstrate this problem. And then to advocate, right,
So what we did was we have framed 10 basic safeguards that we feel are important for any country to ensure that they are safeguarding the rights of their pretrial detainees. We've looked at issues, we've looked at very closely between the process from arrest till you are in detention. Where are the loopholes? Where is are there enough guarantees to your constitutional right to a lawyer, which clearly is not, because if you see on the screen, in 34 countries, if you don't have a lawyer, the trial will continue.
even without a lawyer.
Even without a lawyer. That basically means your constitutional rights or your rights under the UDHR have no meaning. And every single convention, every single document that exists on fair trial rights always talks about a right to a lawyer. But that's not there. Then there are no timelines, which is why the period of detention of prisoners is so high. Further, there are so many arbitrary arrests. There's no provision for review. So we found those small issues in all the jurisdictions. There was not one single jurisdiction which had all the safeguards that one should have. And that is the problem, and that is what the report tries to highlight. So what the report does, it's valuable for every country, whether in or without the Commonwealth. It's really valuable because what it presents is an opportunity to look at other countries' laws and look at how what kind of laws can be brought into your own country in the reforms. So that is why it's important, not just for the civil society, but it's important for the law firms also. Where lawyers are arguing, you can very well use those international examples and say, see, in UK, there is this law. Why can't, the court direct something like that? So that way, it's come out as a very valuable resource. And I did want to add that, our relationship with trust law was also, so it did happen at the Asia Pro Bono Conference in Kathmandu, because I met Trishna there outside one of your venues, and we talked about the report, we talked about everything. So yes, the Asia Pro Bono Conference also had a great role to play in furthering this collaboration.
That warms my heart.
Absolutely true.
That absolutely. So thank you both. Thank you both on this. I mean, again, this is such, when we're talking about the buffet and the examples of collaboration, this is such, and it's such an important area. And of course, we're going to now look at some additional other areas. And with that, I think I'd like to turn to Rachita from Herbert Smith Freehills. And just as a note, HSF, which initially was Freehills, has helped to support the Asia Pro Bono Conference. And even before there was the Acts of Justice Exchange, since the beginning, since 2012, they've been core supporters and collaborators to really make this happen. They do amazing work. We collaborate with them, with my organization, and they do, so many other examples. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachita. And I know Brooke Messenger's on, but I think Rachita's going to be doing the presenting today. So Rachita, over to you. You ready?
Yeah.
Great. And remember, let's hear about your justice hero.
Okay, so my justice hero is Baroness Hale of Richmond. She's a British judge who also served as president of the Supreme Court of the UK from 2017 until just recently in 2020 when she retired. She was the very first and one of the very few females to have ever been a Supreme Court judge in the United Kingdom. And actually her journey to the top of her field featured many firsts. She was the first from her school to attend Cambridge, where she came top of her class. She was the first woman appointed to the Law Commission. She was made Britain's first female law lord in 2004. In 2009, she became the first woman to serve on the UK Supreme Court. And in 2017, she became its first woman president. So she, to me, represents the courage to go where no one has gone before and the progress that can be achieved by seizing opportunity after opportunity. And we bring those same feelings of aspiration and hope at Herbert Smith Freehills to all the work, the pro bono work that we do, particularly so in Asia, where we often find ourselves going into uncharted territory, but for very worthy causes. So I'll move on now.
Wonderful, thank you. Absolutely. And having worked alongside you for so long, I can absolutely say that you walk that walk and you have those values and uncharted territory and keep pushing forward. So thank you. So let's hear a little bit about those collaborations.
Okay, so I'll start with some examples of our collaborative work in Asia, and I'll get into some depth about these, and then I'll tell you a bit about our collaborative work beyond Asia. So the first project that I'd like to mention is the UNHCR Work Permits Project. We HSF are one of a number of firms who collaborated with UNHCR in Hong Kong to process work permit applications for refugees in Hong Kong. And actually, this is a really great example of how many hands make light work. We assist the refugees to prepare and to process their work permit applications and renewals of their work permits at regular intervals with the Hong Kong Immigration Department. We assist with all the supporting documents, and we support the employee and their employer through every step of the process. The other great thing about this project is that it's managed almost entirely by associates who over time get to form really great relationships with the refugees whose permits they're responsible for. Another UNHCR project that we have been collaborating on recently is called the Displaced and Disconnected Project. So this is a global research project which focuses on a very significant barrier to access amongst refugees and other displaced persons, which is the legal and regulatory requirements mandating that an individual's ID has to be authenticated before they can access a mobile connection or a bank account or a mobile money wallet. As you might appreciate, this becomes a really big issue for refugees because they usually do not hold any valid ID. So the research that we did aims to systematically understand and address these challenges country by country. We at HSF carried out research in relation to Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. And we also collaborated with an Indian firm called AMS Shardul, who is also a large law firm, to deliver research for India.
So your collaboration, just to make clear, you collaborated with a large law firm in India and then in Malaysia and Papua New Guinea. You said Papua New Guinea, is that right?
That's right.
And the collaboration there was with NGOs?
The collaboration there, no, we did that research on our own,
Okay.
our own research.
With offices that you have there?
For the research for Malaysia, it was through our Malaysia office.
Great.
The research for Papua New Guinea was actually taken on by our Melbourne office.
A desk review. Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to make it clear in my brain because my brain gets fuzzy. Keep going.
So in connection with that project, we also connected UNHCR with a large bank, one of our clients, to explore the possibilities for that bank to start offering consumer banking services to refugees in one of the countries concerned. And so, yeah, this is really a hugely important topic. I think change is definitely on the horizon, and we're really looking forward to the next steps ahead and to fostering our relationships with all the other institutions and firms who are becoming part of this movement.
So that's great. So you said a bank, a large law firm in India.
Yeah.
You had multiple collaborations between branch offices of HSF because often that's a type of collaboration, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then of course UNHCR all together. That's like one big, in my country would call it gumbo collaboration, which is delicious. Well done. Well done.
Thanks. The next project I'd like to speak about is our collaboration with Justice Without Borders, also known as JWB. We've collaborated with them for several years, actually, across our offices in Jakarta, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Some of you might be familiar with JWB. Their mission is to close the gap in access to justice for migrant domestic workers from Indonesia and the Philippines who work or have worked in Singapore or Hong Kong. In instances where these migrant domestic workers are exploited abroad, generally by their employers, they often have little recourse, and those employers often escape without any punishment or consequence. So we have a very long-standing and ongoing collaboration with JWB, and we've supported every aspect of their work, from casework to strategic research to capacity building. And I'll share some of the recent examples of work we've done with them. So in our Hong Kong office, our lawyers recently collaborated with JWB to co-author a handbook for pursuing cross-border claims for migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong. After months of worthwhile work, the handbook was finally completed and published. And then we also co-hosted an event to launch the handbook, which was attended by representatives from other law firms and civil society organizations. In our Singapore office, our lawyers collaborated with JWB over a number of years, actually, to develop research on a topic called illegal deployment. So this is a term used for situations where a domestic worker is asked to perform tasks outside the scope of his or her employment. This was a relatively novel and untested issue in Singapore, and it was only through comparative research into the law in other common law jurisdictions and a careful analysis of the concepts of illegality and restitution that HSF and JWB together managed to suggest some potential remedies under Singapore law. And after we completed the research, we also co-delivered a training event to present our understanding of this issue and the potential remedies to other legal practitioners in Singapore. In our Jakarta office, our lawyers regularly deliver training to caseworkers of frontline community organizations across Indonesia. These organizations are mentored by JWB to identify and detect instances of injustice amongst migrant domestic workers. So the great thing is that these organizations have very good penetration into their communities, and these caseworkers, once they're properly trained, can often identify cases which otherwise would have gone unnoticed and unheard, bringing access to justice to those who never even dreamed that they would have it. Finally, to provide an example of our involvement in a case that was recently brought to the Singapore courts, our lawyers in Singapore assisted with analysis on specific points which were an issue in that case, and we collaborated with another local counsel in Singapore who had already been appointed to represent the client in court. Meanwhile, our lawyers in our Jakarta office assisted the same client by providing her with support and IT equipment to allow her to attend her hearing and give evidence by video from Jakarta in the middle of the pandemic. So these are some examples of our collaboration with JWB, which, as I mentioned, is very much an ongoing collaboration.
And I'll add into that, I think similar to what Maharima was saying about 2019 when they met trust law, I think it was in 2013 that JWB came to the second Asia Pro Bono conference in Ho Chi Minh City. And I think that's when I think some of those partnerships began to be developed. So it was in a nascent stage. So that's really great to hear and to see how it's really grown from there.
Yeah, it's very much a growing organization. Yeah. I think the last project I will discuss in Asia, last but certainly not least, is for an NGO named Rain Lily in Hong Kong. They are front-facing the issue of gender-based violence in Hong Kong. And I know some other firms who are here today, including DLA Piper, are also collaborating with Rain Lily. So we assist them to identify and, where possible, process complaints on gender-based violence and seek redress for their clients before the Equal Opportunities Commission in Hong Kong. So if we have a few more minutes, I'll bring up one more example of collaborative work we're doing outside Asia. It's a really good and recent example. It's called the Rule 39 Project. The Rule 39 project is coordinated actually by the Italian Coalition for Civil Liberties and Rights to help refugees in Europe make applications to the European Court for Human Rights for interim relief in emergency situations. There are 9 city firms in London who are participating in this, and we at HSF have approximately 20 associates across our London, Brussels, Germany, Italy, Spain, and France offices who've signed up. In the last 8 months, the Rule 39 project has secured some really fantastic outcomes for extremely vulnerable individuals, including helping over 60 people from 10 countries seeking asylum, safeguarding the human rights of more than 15 children seeking asylum in perilous conditions, and in Ukraine, bringing to safety a number of migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers who were held in a detention center close to the front line of the war. This center was ultimately hit by a missile, so this case ultimately saved the lives of those refugees. Yeah, we're really very
incredibly diverse. Yeah, incredibly diverse, and really global, and demonstrating real global collaborations and in all these different type of thematic areas. And as I said before, it's really HSF has been and continues to be a really amazing model. And I said it before, walking the walk of showing how collaborations can work, how to form partnerships, and long term. That's the other thing you mentioned that with JWB, where it's long term. It's not just like 1 year, 2 year. You're in it for, because we understand that the institutionalization of things doesn't happen in 1 or 2 years. It's a long term strategy. And you have to walk alongside people together for there's an ebb and a flow, but if you keep going, things definitely institutionalize. So with that, Rachita, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough. And with that, I'm going to turn to I think our White and Case representative, the other Rob Whitworth. And Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about your justice hero, who I, of course, never heard of. Never, ever, being from America. And then a little bit about the amazing collaborative work that White and Case is involved in.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Yeah, so I'm sure a number of people are already familiar with my justice hero, and so I've chosen Brian Stevenson, who is an American lawyer, for those who are not familiar with him. So Brian Stevenson was a Harvard law graduate who moved after he graduated from Harvard to Alabama and set up a non-profit law firm there called the Equal Justice Initiative. And that was back in the 80s. And he basically dedicated the entirety of his professional life to working with underrepresented individuals and people who had essentially gotten themselves on the wrong side of the criminal justice system in the United States. Most famously, as documented, I think in a movie that it might be on Netflix or other valid streaming service, he helped to secure the release from death row of Walter McMillan, who'd been wrongly convicted for a murder and had spent several years on death row. But he's also worked in a number of different areas to ensure that people from less privileged backgrounds have access to justice, and that they have the same access to justice as people who have, a great deal of money or the resources to secure that. And so, for example, he's taken cases all the way to the US Supreme Court and had it declared unconstitutional. I believe that the whole life sentences for juveniles, to have it declared that whole life sentences for juveniles are unconstitutional. So I think and I guess the reason why he's, a great example of a justice hero is that, and this really ties into the work that we do as a firm, but the thrust of his kind of passion is really to ensure that everyone has the same access to justice, right? And that really ties into some of the projects I'll talk a little bit about now. And so, yeah, if I might pick up just from almost where Rachita left off, obviously we're a global firm, right? So a lot of our collaborations operate around the globe in the US, as well as in Europe and in Asia too. In Europe, the focus in recent years, which is primarily driven, by geopolitical factors, has been very much on representing asylum seekers and those fleeing violence. So in Greece, we've been working on something called the Greece Pro Bono Collaborative, which involves representing asylum seekers on the island of Lesbos in Greece. So we've now committed, alongside I think 4 or 5 other firms, to sending representatives on secondments out to Greece to provide advice to individuals who are seeking asylum within the EU. And so we send individuals year round there. And each of the lawyers that assist when they go on the secondment, they see multiple applicants a week, I think somewhere between 15 and 20. And I think the impact of our work has been substantial. I think around 75% of the asylum seekers that we've supported have been granted international protection, and where the average is somewhere, I think, around 50%. So it's great to see that work's been effective. In terms of other collaborations, something that Jonathan mentioned at the Pro Bono conference last week, but we're heavily involved with the Cornell Law School and their Women and Justice collection. So in each jurisdiction around the world, including in Asia, lawyers volunteer to look into the individual jurisdictions and basically report back to Cornell Law School, who are collating a huge library, essentially, which sets out all of the applicable laws in each jurisdiction in connection with women's justice rights. So I think, basically documenting laws in effect that relate to violence against women, trafficking, gender discrimination laws, and that kind of thing. So each individual jurisdiction in Asia and around the world is slowly being documented by Cornell Law School with our help. As Bruce will be familiar, we've also partnered with Babsicle, and we're hoping to do so again in the next few months to deliver gender-based violence consultation training, which we're doing in Laos. We did that back in Laos a couple of years ago, and I think it was a great success, and something which we hope that the individual students who are being taught skills essentially on counseling and how to assist victims of gender-based violence in Laos. So we think that was a great success, and we're very much looking forward to taking part in that again.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you in November. I think that's the plan. So focusing
That's right.
now that the world has turned a little more right side up again, to be able to get people back in, which would be great.
Yeah. So I'll pause there, Bruce. I've got a couple of other examples, but I don't want to go on all day. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would love just for you to share briefly about just Bhutan. I think the collaboration of White and Case, you helped to support the development of their first law school there. And again, I'm just making a mention of, you don't have to present on it, but I know that that's been really fantastic. And if why don't you share a couple of other examples, and then because you have many, but maybe a couple of others if you want to.
Yeah, thanks for yeah, absolutely. I know that was something that I think was seen as a real success. So we're very proud of that. I mean, in terms of other examples, we recently I think we took part in a partnership in a Know Your Rights camp, which was also based in the States, but it essentially is something which allows young people, persons of color, to take part in something organized by Colin Kaepernick, who's famously the footballer in America,
Taking the knee,
indeed. And so the camp there was really for persons of color to get together and to really understand what their civil rights are. And they took part in workshops there, and I think that was also seen as a great way to kind of make sure that people, similar to the work that Brian Stevenson's done, right, to understand that the law is something that should apply to everyone, and everyone has the same rights before the law. So just another example there. And then maybe finally, very recently, I think in June of this year, one of our partners in New York successfully secured I think a $10 million settlement for a man who'd been wrongfully convicted in New York State and had spent 25 years in prison. He'd been sentenced on the basis of very slim evidence, and I think potentially just one eyewitness who'd later recanted his testimony and been sentenced to 25 years in prison. So he was exonerated in 2018 with the firm's help, and now, as we managed to achieve a settlement for him as well in the last couple of months. So that was great too.
Fantastic. And I think in the next session, actually today, we have another example of collaborations, just as a pitch. White and Case, along with our organization and others, we developed out a virtual business, human rights, ethics, law, rule of law training that was delivered over a 6 or 7 month period, once a month. And in the next session after this, there's going to be a discussion about how that virtual training happens. Aaron's on here actually from DLA Piper. They have a similar, another type of virtual training that also is very collaborative, and so it's really great to see similarities and and also uniqueness in all of this. But Rob, thanks so much again. We can't be really more happy. We're thrilled now that White and Case has your Asia Pro Bono team that's been pulled together and is really ramping up. with really great vision. So, and we're confident that there will be even more things being produced from you all. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to Aaron from DLA Piper, who I saw last week in Vientiane. So Aaron, why don't you start with who you are, who your justice here is, because nobody knows who that is, and then tell us a little bit about your collaborations. And I'm just, no one knows who that is, but I have a cat named after that person behind you.
Well, definitely it's my honor to introduce the ladies who I chosen to be my justice hero to all of you here in this session. So the justice hero that I have chosen is the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg. I think what she has done a lot of things definitely, but one thing that definitely inspired me and also touched me so much is definitely the work that she has done during her time as an attorney before she turned it into a judge. You may know that, like, from history or from the movie about her, or from like other resources, you would know that Ms. Ginsburg spent a lot of time as an attorney in representing victims of gender-based violence or victim of discrimination. She advocated and represented a number of persons to fight for like fair treatment, and there should be no like differential treatment based on the basis of sex. So and also what I love her so much is she not only very intelligent, but at the same time she is very like innovative. She whenever one is thinking about like or fighting for women's right, we must have a like female litigant to do that. Like she can like see another angle, perhaps like having a male litigant to do that may also achieve the same result, or even make the case easier to go to the high level of court. So that's one thing I truly like get inspired by her. And actually that also touched on like what DLA Piper has been working on pro bono. So one of the key areas that we have in Asia is the gender-based violence issue. Just like HSF, we are also one of the firms that work in the Ringling Legal Clinic project. I guess we start working in that project since 2017, and since then every year we provide like 300 to 500 hours on pro bono to the Ringling Legal Clinic. When we come to gender-based violence, it only limited to like physical or non-physical violence against women. We also care for the LGBT rights. So under the umbrella of gender-based violence, we also work with NGOs and providing direct representation to victims of discrimination that the victim may be a transgender person who try to get fair treatment when he or she is getting the service. So we also do that a lot. I guess a lot of like examples is similar to what Rachita and Rob may have covered. But when it comes to like institutionalizing access to justice, I guess there's one thing it's not yet being covered, which I may be able to offer some like fresh idea to this session, is the collaboration with universities and also collaboration with NGOs on law reform and policy proposal. I think something that we're very proud of is our practical and ethical skill course that we have been doing in the past few years with different university and student organization in the Asia Pacific region. So we started it with the University of South Pacific. So a number of students from like Vanuatu, Fiji, and the Solomon Islands, Samoa has joined this project, has joined this program, where our lawyers from Australia and other parts of the Asia Pacific region help to provide a 5-day training to students, so let them know more about some like lawyering skills and also some ethical duties of lawyers. So when they need to work in the legal profession as a lawyer, so they may have a better understanding about like what they can do and what they cannot do. And we find this project like very important and also help the student a lot. That's why in that's why since last year, we also start doing this kind of project in Asia as well. In July, we did one with the Indonesian Society of International Law, which we have around 30 students joining this program and learn about lawyering skills and ethical duty as a lawyer. We also have a similar program in August with Asian Law Student Association for the students in Myanmar and also students from other parts of Asia. We find that it's very important because future lawyers is definitely the future of the legal profession. We want to equip them to make sure that they are competent, they are professional, and also they are going to honor their duty in an ethical way. So, and with more duties with this kind of qualities, it's definitely going to help that country, that jurisdiction to build more access and also smoothen the access to justice for the people there. And also actually a lot of students in this country may not have a very clear understanding about the concept of access to justice, rule of law, and pro bono. So we also try to provide some knowledge on these topics to students. So so they will get this idea, and when they get into the job market, get into the legal profession, so they can implement it in their career and also bring this to their society. So this is something that we're quite proud of ourselves in doing that. And actually, we also have a session on Saturday that talks about this program. So in case you are interested, please tune in on Saturday morning for the session. I will show you some demonstration and so let you know more about the impact of the course. Another project I think that I want to talk about is how we support NGOs to provide law reform to prepare law reform proposal and also prepare policy proposal. I think NGOs is very important partners that we have in advocating social change. So what we always do is we provide the legal research for the NGOs, so they can use as their basis to provide to prepare law reform and policy ideas. Last year when COVID hit the world, we noticed that there are a number of countries that releasing prisoners to reduce the population in the prisons and also help prevent a spread of COVID in the prisons. So we work with the Association of Prevention of Torture in preparing a study covering 50 plus countries, talk about their early release program and also how they deal with the open population issue during the COVID period. And we prepare the observation, we analyze the policy, and also suggest some ideas and best practice for other countries to follow. So hopefully this is also the way that we can try to share the knowledge or what is happening in other parts of the world to a particular jurisdiction or to a particular NGO, so they can use it and try to make their place a better place for everyone. So this is also some of the things that we are working very hard to do that. Yes, I guess these are the main collaboration that I want to talk about. And one more thing I want to said is, I guess it's echoing what Rob Houston said earlier, that pro bono or working on improving access to justice is definitely not the large firm duty. It's everyone's duty. We are also just one of the members in the jurisdictions, one of the members of the legal profession. So we value all the opportunities to partner with all like-minded people, not only with NGOs, not only with activists. We are also happy to work with small firms to do that. They may be in a better position than us in understanding the needs of the society, and also may have more ideas that can solve the problems of the jurisdiction. So we're always looking forward to working with local NGOs, local small firm in working on this issue. Another thing that we are also trying to do more is to partnering with our commercial clients. So we definitely see that each of us will have our own expertise and knowledge. So this kind of collaboration is just like kind of like bring more people to this issue, and each of us can contribute the best that we have to improve access to justice, and also perhaps rule of law and other social issues as well. So we are working with a lot of commercial clients on pro bono. We look forward to keep doing that and keep getting more people to work on this matter. For example, in our light teaching program with our practical and analytical skill teaching program, we have involved like GE, and also in some of the research projects we involve Honeywell in the practical skill training with USB, we have lawyers from Westpac and Suncorp. So this is how we're trying to like expand the like team pro bono, and also expand the team to get more people to get involved. So so don't limit yourself, or don't limit your eyesight thinking that it's only like large firm lawyers will do that. Actually, everyone can play a role. So in case you guys would like to join us, or have any ideas that we can support, just feel free to reach out to, I guess, any of us. We are more than happy to keep this conversation going and see how we can bring something to your jurisdiction. Back to you, Bruce.
Thanks, Aaron. And I think Aaron points out, something, a few things that, and re-emphasizing, number one is the idea that, large law firms can work in collaboration with small law firms. And that was actually discussed. And I think Rachita was discussing that with HSF before, where actually a large law firm with another large law firm, but often large law firms could do things with smaller law firms that maybe have more licensed practitioners in local jurisdictions. And also, as Aaron was pointing out, looking at your clients, a lot of your clients have in-house counsel. And I think, when Rob was talking about, coming up to Laos, I think the last time the Whiting case team was with us in Laos, they brought up one of the lawyers from Singapore working as an in-house counsel. And we've seen this in many ways, and often working with your clients, especially in-house counsel, it gives them something else to do, and they're incredibly grateful. So this increases your collaboration with your own clients, and that's hey, that's great. that's always a positive thing. So it's that giving, if you can give and get at the same time, that's fantastic. So okay, so here we looked at all these different
Bruce, just want to add one thing on this. So I'm sure that a lot of you is aware of the increasing awareness on sustainability, and more attention put on the UN SDGs. So actually, like access to justice is one of the SDG that we have. So more and more companies are putting attention on this matter, and also on other ESG or sustainability related matters. So there are definitely a lot of potentials in getting more and more people involved, not only lawyers, but also maybe company, to support like our work on like improving access to justice.
Yeah, and very good point. I mean, and actually during the conference last week, we had a session on both SDGs and ESGs, and focusing not just on lawyers and not just legal service providers, and especially as this being part of the Access to Justice Exchange, not just pro bono, but broader, the ESGs are, and having people follow, these guidelines is really important to help further ensure greater access to justice in a plethora of ways. And working with your clients to do that is, compliance and even just awareness is incredibly vital. So these were great examples. I mean, so we looked at examples both in Asia and outside of Asia. We looked at prisons, we looked at refugees, we looked at teachings, we took gender-based violence. I mean, and we can go on and on and on. And I think that when you think about this space that we're working in, and how the space gets filled, you realize that it's almost limitless in the ideas, and what you need to do is just come up with ideas. And as Madarima said, when they met trust law, and they came up with this idea of doing this report in 2019. You come up with these ideas, and then often these large law firms, they're great resources. We have found that across the board. You find a good person there at a firm. All the firms here have them, and there's so many others that have vision. And then they're able to, pitch it and approve it. And they also have, they have resources, and the resources are usually, human resources. We suggest, working with large firms, it's important to connect into their human resources, because they have, incredible persons that can assist you in so many ways. NGOs, we've seen NGOs, they've helped NGOs to register. I've seen large law firms help on report writing with NGOs, tracking data, because they just have so many incredible resources. So as we said, they're an integral part. They're not the only thing, but an integral part into that chain, that chain of all of us working together to achieve access to justice and strengthen pro bono and other things. So with that said, I don't know if others have questions, or if people would like to share other examples that you yourself have on collaborations that have been done with law firms. So with that, I'll
chime in?
up. Yep, Rob, over to you. And Rob, I think you should. I'd like to hear a little bit about the Global Pro Bono Bar Association.
Sure thing. So I also serve, thanks, Bruce. I also serve as the executive director of the Global Pro Bono Bar Association. And that's an organization that I and other international lawyers started some years back. The idea being that maybe there is some potential, not just in working together within a large law firm, or even with working together with local counsel, but bringing folks together as individuals into a platform where they can work on projects that make it possible to achieve, things together that make, may not be quite so easy to achieve if we're separate. So the Global Pro Bono Bar Association, for example, back in 2020, one of the things that was fantastic about that, well, no, I shouldn't say it that way. There was a silver lining to the otherwise gray pandemic, was that the Global Pro Bono Bar Association brought together 35 different interns from Australia and also from Asia over in the United States, and put them on, to work on projects for the organization in teams. So the folks got a chance to meet others from around the world who are also studying law, and build some relationships, get to learn a little bit about pro bono, get to learn a little bit about legal professionalism. So projects like that have been, I think, really, really rewarding in the Global Pro Bono Bar context. But coming back just generally, so we're talking today about institutionalization of pro bono. And as I'm sitting here listening to the comments that folks have, and the great projects that have been just one after another examples of some of the great things that are possible when we all work together, and when large law firms bring their teams together to focus on some of these issues. I was also thinking about institutionalization. That's what we're here to talk about. And, when you're thinking about how to make pro bono stick, how to make, an impact stick, how to make it work for the long term, then I think it's really important for us to recognize the roles that we all have to play in that. Now, large law firms, the great thing that they have to offer is that they're crossing borders, so they're folks working within one law firm that are already based in multiple jurisdictions. They're used to crossing borders when it comes to representing clients, in one context or another. And so when it comes to pro bono matters, then they're able and ready to embrace the differences that they may find from one jurisdiction to the next, sometimes even when they don't have local lawyers present. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need local lawyers. And in fact, you have to have the local lawyers, or you won't be able to advise on anything in that particular jurisdiction. But when you bring together that capacity, you just mentioned, Bruce, you just mentioned resources. When you bring together that capacity within global law firms, or just large law firms generally, bring together that capacity and those resources. And a lot of times, the folks who really, really are excited to stop for a moment working on the M&A project, to stop for a moment the dispute, and turn to something that is in their minds impactful, right, in the pro bono space. When you bring that together with local counsel, you have not only the cross-jurisdictional capacity to start driving change, to promote the rule of law, to stop the fight or to advance the fight against modern slavery, for example, right? But you also have that ability with the local firms to dig down locally and to engage. So I just wanted to make that point that all of us have a part to play, like I said earlier, but the end state, the end goal is not any one particular project like the great ones that we've talked about today, but is the long-term, making pro bono to spread as a phenomenon, here in Asia and abroad, and also to achieve some of those goals. Someone was discussing the SDGs earlier today. To start to achieve those goals that we'd like to achieve as a human family, working together, both in the large law firm world and in the small local rooted engagement. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I think that's great, and I'm going to call. Aaron had his hand up, but just briefly, I just want to add to that. Also, I would say, and having worked alongside large law firms for quite a long time, I also say that access and some countries, people may not understand pro bono access to justice as much. And we've spent a lot of time, our own organization, BAPSICLE, going and working with governments and trying to explain what it is and why it's good. And I can tell you that when we come forward and we demonstrate that we do this alongside these large international law firms, it really makes a difference, and it's a positive difference. It's a trust building, so we're always thankful for that. And I can tell you that it really, in a positive way, it opens doors. And that's a good thing. Aaron, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just want to echo what Rob just said. The long-term planning is really important. And one thing I think is really like our strength in supporting different jurisdictions is to help with the long-term planning of like asset justice development and also rule of law building. Like in DA Piper, we have a full-time pro bono team. We have the resources as Bruce said, so we can delegate like manpower and also resources on how with this kind of long-term planning work. And other thing that I think is also a role that we can play is definitely capacity building. For example, in DA Piper, we have a not-for-profit affiliate called New Permitter, and it focuses on providing long-term support to developing jurisdictions in strengthening their rule of law system and also like strengthening the access to justice. What we do is, for example, like before COVID time, we will send lawyers to Nepal, for example, provide a training with like groups of lawyers in Nepal to let them know more about like commercial law practice. We understand that we cannot do everything. We really rely on the local partners to make it happen, to make our vision happen. That's why we spend a lot of time in building capacity for local lawyers, so that they can like understand like how the same thing works in other jurisdictions, and they can bring it back to their own society. So yes, I guess like a lot of things is like it's just the same that we are just trying to do what the society want us to do. And so that's why we definitely welcome a lot of comments and suggestions and ideas from the local parties to let us know what we can do. Thank you.
That's great, Aaron. And, I would say, and, definitely pre-COVID, and now that we're sort of more coming out of this, one of the experiences that we would have we would help to organize a lot of trainings in different countries. And we would have different large law firm representatives come together, and we would, collaborate all together. And it was just wonderful, and people from their own office, their own firms, but different offices would come. And then we would have somebody from another firm come in, and it's great. And again, the sharing ideas and this real demonstration of collaboration is fantastic. So we've been doing it virtually. We will continue to do it virtually, but as the space opens up now, we're looking forward to be able to do this a little bit more physical, and we absolutely know it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. So so thank you all so much. So with that, I think, are there any other comments or any other thoughts, people? I think we can give ourselves a round of applause, to all of us. We point to each other and to everyone out there. I think, this was really great. And we look forward to continuing to do this. Like I said, there's another great session coming up next at 3 p.m. ICT, which is an example of White and Case doing virtual trainings with universities on business law, rule of law, ethics, but many other things today, tomorrow, and on Saturday. Aaron talked about some other things. So just look at the agenda. Some really amazing and diverse things. And with that, I want to say thanks to all of our presenters and all of you that have been here. And I think I got through my cold a little bit better than I thought I was going to. And so thumbs up. Thank you all. And I look forward to being in touch with you in so many ways. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everybody.